Hello, everyone. I hope you all had a great week. And man, I've got some news items to go over before I get into the main topics of this video, before I start ranting and raving like a crazy wrestling fan. A couple of personal things to cover, both personal and professional. Number one, baby number two is on the way. It's very exciting. My wife is very excited about it. Little Elizabeth, she's, I hope she doesn't get too jealous when the little one rolls around in April, but we'll see. It's going to be right before Easter. That's the due date. And it's a very exciting time for us. Our family's growing, and it's, again, very, very exciting, but it also means I'm going to be very, very busy in 2025. So be aware of that. Additionally, I've had some major changes take place at work that are going to affect my schedule in a very positive way, meaning I will have more time. I don't want to give away too many details about what's going on. Nothing that exciting. It's just nothing set in stone yet, so I don't want to jinx it. But my work schedule is going to become a little bit lighter moving forward, which is better for me, better for my family, and gives me a little bit more time to make some more content on YouTube. So that should be fun. So with all of that said, let's go ahead and get started with the ranting and raving. First of all, I do want to say I saw Bad Blood. Generally enjoyed it. I thought Punk and McIntyre was fantastic and the type of match that WWE hasn't had in years. The Hell in a Cell gimmick has been slowly eroded and ruined pretty much since they debuted the pay-per-view concept. It's just something that has become less and less important, less and less meaningful, and just kind of feels like another bland gimmick match that they throw out there every once in a while. I thought Punk and McIntyre kind of threw all that out the window. We had a nice, violent, bloody match. Kind of reminded me of Magnum TA and Tully Blanchard from '85. It was that level of just them beating the crap out of each other and blood everywhere. Good stuff. And of course, blood is exceptionally rare in WWE these days, and the fact that they were allowed to do that shows like a changing of the times of what WWE is going to permit on their programming. Now, I will say, and I saw some AEW fans say this on Twitter, and I'm kind of on their side about this, is that whenever AEW does a violent match, like, people online go, oh my god, this is sick, this is disgusting, the AEW went too far. I think back to the Omega Moxley, the first match they had, not the exploding barbed wire match that went badly, but the first one they had that was a full-on no holds barred extreme hardcore match, and people were saying they went too far and it was one of the most violent matches of all time. And I'm sitting there like, if I were going to rank the most violent matches that I've seen personally, that match wouldn't even crack the top 10. So I had no idea what everybody was talking about. And then WWE does this match, which I thought was significantly more violent, at least to me. Like, it was a lot more gruesome. And it's getting praised everywhere online. So there's that WWE. It's a weird thing with WWE where you have some people that'll hate it no matter what they do because they're WWE and, screw the evil empire. It's like some of the people that hate Disney. Lord knows I've said plenty of negative things about Disney, but it's like they're so massive that it's like, man, screw them. They suck. Regardless of the actual quality of the product. Now, granted, most of Disney's products these days have been garbage, but WWE is actually mostly good. Kind of some of the weekly programming drags a little bit because it's too long, but generally the show's been pretty good. But you will have those people that just hate WWE no matter what. And on the flip side of that, you will have people that praise everything WWE does no matter what because they grew up with it, and nostalgia is a very powerful drug. And I felt like I saw a little bit of that online where it's like, wait a minute, Punk and McIntyre is like the greatest thing ever, and I've watched AEW get bashed several times for going too far with the violence. But I will say in AEW where they screw up is that they do blood way too often. I mean, Moxley basically turned it into a running gag, and that's a problem. And that ties into everything that I've said about wrestling and stuff that I'm going to talk about in this very video. They do too much, and blood is one of the things that AEW just did way, way too much. I think you should use it when you need it and when the match calls for it. Not every match needs to be a bloodbath, and I hope somebody finally told Moxley that, and because he seems to have cut down a little bit on that. But in any case, I just thought that reaction to it was very funny. But yeah, I thought the match was great. Thought it was good. Liked it. Punk and McIntyre actually sold it on the next Raw, where McIntyre wasn't even there and Punk looked like a corpse walking out there. You don't see that anymore, where people actually sell their injuries following a pay-per-view. A lot of times, you know, they'll do a really violent match on pay-per-view and then they wrestle on the very next show. And I'm like, no, they probably shouldn't be doing that. You got to sell that what they actually went through was actually hell in a cell. And so I appreciate they took those steps as well. I'm also thinking about doing maybe a top 10 Hell in a Cell match video, so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, no, I thought that match was great. The biggest problem I had with it was that it was probably too good as the opener because nothing else on the card lived up to it. Bayley and Nia, I thought was there, and this happened like 2 or 3 times where Nia countered one of Bayley's moves and it was supposed to be Nia shifting the momentum back to her, but the move was botched, and it happened like 2 or 3 times. So it wasn't exactly the crispest, the most crisp match ever. And some of the stuff that Tiffany Stratton teasing a cash-in was kind of funny, but other than that, the match was just not very good, especially coming off the heels of the Hell in a Cell match. Finn and Damian Priest, I forgot about that match 5 minutes after it was over. Like, I just didn't care. Kind of like how I forgot about that triangle ladder match they did on SmackDown right before the pay-per-view. Because, you know, I mean, I'm glad it wasn't on the pay-per-view itself, because, good Lord. But, you know, it just feels, every time I see a multi-man ladder match pop up, I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess it's been 2 weeks. Time to do another one of those. And it'll be instantly forgotten because nobody truly cares anymore when those matches take place. But anyways, then we got Rhea versus Liv Morgan with Dominic Mysterio suspended above the ring in a shark cage. And I thought the match was okay. I would have, and this is where, and I've talked about this a little bit on Twitter and on this channel, where too many matches are laid out exactly the same, where it's that format of like face gets beat down and then face makes comeback and yada, yada, yada. And it's the same format. Then you do finisher kickouts and then somebody wins. And too many matches are structured way too similarly, where I think back to when I was a kid, a Jake Roberts match and a Hulk Hogan match were 2 completely different things. And then you throw like a Hart Foundation match in there. It was never the same type of match all night long. And a lot of times in modern pay-per-views, AEW and WWE, it feels like every match is structured almost exactly the same way, with only like the gimmick, like, okay, Punk and McIntyre was in Hell in a Cell, so they're going to have a lot of blood, so that makes their match different, but then everything else was kind of like, I mean, if you strip it down, the actual layout of the match and the story was like virtually identical for a lot of modern matches, and that's, I wish we could get somebody as an agent who like has a little bit more of a creative mind and comes up with different things, because this match followed that same paint-by-numbers formula. I would have preferred something like Undertaker and Shawn in 97, where Rhea like pursues Liv and she's running away the entire time. And I think you could have had a lot more fun with that and made it a little bit more memorable. Instead, it was just kind of laid out like every other match is. And I'm like, whatever. And then you got the ending that was botched with Raquel Rodriguez coming back and assisting, getting Liv Morgan disqualified. Credit to the referee for calling for the DQ there, and I actually do not mind that, even though it was a botch, I don't mind a DQ finish, because it's like, yeah, the heel's using the rules to her advantage. Like, that played out, that was a weird case where the ending actually played out better than what they had originally planned, because I felt like Rhea doesn't need to eat another pin here. And, you know, so it kind of preserves her at least a little bit as kind of this unstoppable, more like monster woman wrestler, and it allowed the heel to sneak away with the title. So I actually thought, like, you know, kudos to the referee for kind of saving that and making it work. So that actually played out well. I was okay with that. But the match itself, I'm like, some of the antics with Dominic were kind of funny, but other than that, like, it wasn't necessarily my cup of tea. But then we got the main event, Cody and Roman versus the Bloodline. Again, the match was fine, but it was structured too similarly to every other tag match, where I felt like the main story should have been Cody and Roman and whether or not they could work together. And they should have played with that drama a little bit more. I think back to Fully Loaded 98 with Undertaker and Steve Austin going up against Kane and Mankind, where the entire build-up to that was like, is Austin walking into a 3-on-1 mugging, or is Undertaker actually going to be on his side? And they use that to tell the story of the match, and then you get to the ending where Undertaker helps him win the belt. Win the tag titles, but then walks out with both belts, so the story continues. That was when storytelling in WWE was at its absolute best, in my opinion, where they did these little hooks to keep you coming in for Raw in the next pay-per-view. Little things like that. And here it was just kind of like the normal main event tag match that was probably similar to various other matches of this type. Roman and Cody won, which was fine. Jimmy Uso returned, which was cool. Set up, OG Bloodline versus New Bloodline and whatever they want to do. That would be a fine War Games match. But then The Rock came back with a surprise return. And it was like, he didn't really do anything. So it was just kind of like, yeah, okay, Rock's there. But he didn't really do anything. So it's like, I guess it was just like a notification on your phone. It's like, Rock's back. And that's pretty much all it was. But in any case, yeah, Punk and McIntyre was the main reason to check the show out, and that delivered. Rest of it, take it or leave it. Not terrible, but it was very much take it or leave it. But one thing I did want to talk about that is kind of the main topic of this video is that during the course of the show, which had I guess you could call this kind of the intermission, which I'm okay with doing stuff like this on a pay-per-view card. And I will say, WWE's pay-per-view structure right now is... They've really settled into that kind of 3-hour, maybe a little bit over 3-hour format, which I think works better for them. The matches are still long, and I feel like you could cut some of those matches down, get a few extra matches on there, and get some quicker, filler matches on there, like the way they used to. I mean, 3 hours used to be long for a pay-per-view, and now it's short. They don't know how to structure themselves properly, but yeah, now you have a pay-per-view full of long matches, like an AEW pay-per-view. It's just an hour shorter, so it feels a little bit less cumbersome than AEW pay-per-views, which just go on forever, and every match tries to be the best match on the show. I feel like Rhea and Liv, you probably could have cut that in half. It would have been fine. Bayley and Nia did not need to be that long. And Damian Priest and Finn Balor did not need to be that long, and you could have fit a few other matches on there to kind of bulk up the card a little bit and have a few short matches to serve as filler in between the bigger ones. So, proper pay-per-view structure. But anyway, we got this announcement from Triple H that there is going to be the Crown Jewel Championship, where the World Heavyweight Champion and the WWE Champion face each other at Crown Jewel to determine the Crown Jewel Champion. And immediately I wanted to puke because it's yet another friggin' belt. And I am sick of titles. I am so sick of new championships. It's ridiculous. It's just man, the amount of new belts that have come out in just the last few years alone has been staggering and annoying. Now, granted, if I'm going to compare AEW and WWE, it's a little less bothersome in WWE because at least there's some kind of a division between for example, the NXT belts pretty much stay on NXT. They're still WWE titles. I still think they contribute to the large number of championships in WWE, but at least they stay over there on NXT, a show that I'm not really watching anyway. The Speed Men and Women's Championships, those are exclusive to that WWE Speed thing that I've never watched personally. You would think that would be my cup of tea because I feel like there needs to be shorter, quicker matches, but it's I don't feel like watching a show full of short matches for a belt I don't care about when I just feel like the matches should be short on TV. I don't know why they feel every match needs to be half an hour long now. It's just have the short matches on TV and let guys get over by winning quick matches. I don't know why they're overcomplicating this, but whatever. The Speed Championships kind of stay on their little island over here. So there's some division. It's not like the AEW situation where if you hold a New Japan belt, you hold a Ring of Honor belt, you hold a AAA belt, it's going to show up on AEW programming. They've got 9,000 belts and none of them feel different or special or unique from each other. And then they wonder why their ratings are going down because it's dude, it's confusing. I can't follow all this crap. But regardless, even though the WWE situation is better, I still don't like that they're doing this championship because it's not going to make me more excited for Crown Jewel, that's for sure. And it's it's going to be a trophy championship. I've heard that. So it's not really going to be defended. It's not really going to mean anything. And it's okay, so you're admitting the belt is pointless. So it's like a new version of the Owen Hart belt that AEW's been doing, where they give the men and women winners their own pink Owen Hart belts. And it's another belt that gets carried around for a couple of months, but ultimately doesn't get defended, doesn't mean anything. And it's are these the only ideas that are coming out now? And I see announcements like this, I see things like this, and I just go, do we need Vince Russo back? Because, good Lord, he'll at least have ideas for stories that you can use that are unique to the characters involved. And that's one thing, when... because I started with wrestling watching WWF. That was my main thing. And most of my NWA and, Jim Crockett Promotions viewing, that came after the fact through tape trading and things like that. Love both. I think there's a lot of merit to the old WWF product. I think there's a lot of merit to the old territories and JCP and old NWA, 80s NWA. I think there's a lot of merit to both. But one advantage that WWE, aside from obvious things like the production and celebrities getting involved and things like that, one advantage that WWE, WWF at the time had over NWA is that they had fewer belts. They had fewer titles. It was just such an easy situation to follow, where it's like you had the world title, the Hogan belt. You had the IC title, which was seen as like the mid-card workhorse title, or a belt to elevate somebody like Ultimate Warrior. That was the secondary belt. And then you had tag titles. And that was it. It was so easy to follow and understand. And then guys who didn't have belts, like the Hacksaw Jim Dugans and the Jake Roberts and the Junkyard Dogs and the Barber Beefcakes and those guys, they could have their own storylines that had nothing to do with the championship. And it was fine. It was great. And it worked. And it created stories that were unique to the specific characters. A Jake Roberts storyline does not need a championship because he's Jake the fucking Snake Roberts, and he could create an amazing storyline. I was so upset when Earthquake killed Damien. You have no idea how upset I was, because of all the animal sidekicks, Damien was by far my favorite. And you cannot do that storyline with anybody else. You can only do it with Jake Roberts. And the point I'm getting at is that if you constantly we want to get this guy over, just throw a belt on him. Create a belt and just throw a belt on the guy. And, the women need an equivalent to that belt, so let's create that too. And I keep hearing they want to do a United States and IC title for the women, to which I want to vomit, because you already have too many belts as it is. You don't need more belts. That's not going to... Liv Morgan is probably the most over woman, like Rhea to a degree, but Liv Morgan as well. Got herself over, not because she won the title, even though she's the champion now. What got her over was that she was being a man-stealing whore. That's what got her over. And that character is what got her over, and that made her interesting. It wasn't the fact that they created a title for her to win. It was... they gave her a character and a direction and a storyline that fit her, and she was able to create and cultivate into something that got her over. And that's special and unique to her. It's like creating a title or creating multiple belts for people to hold just doesn't add anything. It just dilutes the product and dilutes what it means to be a champion even more than it already has been. And I don't know, Vince Russo would probably understand that with because Jim Cornette... tell me if you've heard this one. Jim Cornette has talked about Vince Russo a lot, and I've heard him say it's like he'd be there in the writing room and he'd throw out 8 million ideas, and Vince would take the 2 that had any kind of merit and they'd put that on TV. And you had Jim Ross to call the action, you had Stone Cold Steve Austin, you had The Rock, the 2 top stars of the era, to make it all work. And fuck Vince Russo, fuck shithead and all of his bullshit. And look, I'm sure Vince Russo had a lot of terrible ideas, but... can we recreate that system where we have just one idiot just spiraling off a ton of stupid ideas, and then eventually we get to 3 or 4 ideas that are valuable, and then we can create an interesting wrestling product based off of that? I don't know. That would be fun, instead of creating more friggin' championships. And the funny thing about that segment is that Cody and Gunther is a match I should find interesting. I don't, because it's for a belt that doesn't matter. It's like, who cares? But I was more excited of the prospect of a Goldberg-Gunther match than I was whatever the hell this Saudi Arabia Blood Money belt is. So, that is my take on the whole situation. WWE has too many belts. AEW has too many belts. New Japan has too many belts. Ring of Honor needs to die. I'm still asking for people to tell me, it's like, okay, who is actually watching Ring of Honor on a weekly basis? NXT has too many belts. They all have too many belts. And adding more championships is not going to make your product more exciting, especially now, because it's like you've done them all. Like, all of the possible championships you can possibly think of have all been done. So adding more belts is not going to make any wrestler more exciting or interesting. It is not going to make any wrestling product more exciting and more interesting. Again, I've talked about this. Has been my major talking point for almost the entirety that I've been on YouTube. You need to scale back. You need to scale back to make things matter more. And adding a belt is just not going to help. And I remember when the Invasion angle was getting close to ending, and Mick Foley came out and cut that promo where it sounded like he was kind of shooting on WWE Creative and how bad it was. It seemed to have that kind of element of realism to where he was legitimately pissed off at the show, but he talked about something like, because all the WCW titles existed at the same time with all the WWE titles, he said, if you're walking around this roster right now and you don't have a belt, there's something wrong with you. And it's like, dude, I feel that way about virtually every wrestling product now, where it's like, God, they must really friggin' hate you if you don't have a belt, you know? Honestly, best news come out of AEW, aside from the TV deal, the best news they've had last couple of weeks is when they announced that the FTW title was retired. I'm like, oh, cool, great, awesome. One less belt to worry about. That's awesome, cool. So yeah, that's my take on the Crown Jewel Championship. I don't watch the Saudi Arabia pay-per-views. The last one I watched was the one that had Goldberg and Undertaker on it, and I didn't even watch the full show. I just skipped ahead to Goldberg and Undertaker because people told me it was like one of the worst matches ever, and I was like, well, I gotta see that. I was like, wow, that was one of the worst matches ever, and it's a shame because it's two guys I've been a fan of at various points in my wrestling fandom, but it was like, man, that match didn't work at all. Didn't work well at all, but what can you do? So, yeah, I don't care about this new championship. I don't care if it's a trophy title. I don't care if it's defended weekly or just at the Saudi shows. I don't care. I just hate the fact that there's another belt, and it bothers me. So, that's all I have for this video. Wrestle Dream is tomorrow. I mean, it's like, I don't care. I previewed half the card last week. They've announced a few matches. Let me pull it up and see what other matches have been added to this thing, just for shits and giggles. Okay, Wrestle Dream 2024. What is the full card for this amazing show? Okay, what matches have been added that I did not talk about in last week's video? Darby Allin will be facing Brody King. I'm sure the match will be fine, but there's not enough of a story there to make it exciting. Talked about that one. We have the tag titles, the Young Bucks versus Private Party, who are getting pushed again for... okay, sure. Got to push somebody. It's like, you got the Outrunners. I'm just saying. Like, okay, you got FTR, you've got the Outrunners, and you got the Grizzled Young Vets. And you have the Acclaimed, and Private Party are the ones getting the tag title shots. Okay. They are, as far as I'm concerned, they already got their shot when they had them beat the Bucks on, like, the second Dynamite, I think it was. And it was like, oh, let's see this young team and see what they can do. And they ultimately didn't amount to much. And I felt like the Acclaim became what Private Party was supposed to be. And we're much better at it. But hey, whatever. We got Mariah May defending the women's title against Willow Nightingale. Why is Chris Statlander a babyface again? Did I miss something there in the storyline? And why is she not getting the title shot? Oh, wait, she's going after Mercedes Moné for some reason. I don't know. I don't get it. We've got Hangman Page versus Jay White. Yawn. We've got the MXM collection, Mansoor and Mason Madden versus the Acclaimed. I mean, it's a comedy match. I guess that's okay as long as it's short. We got Hologram versus the Beast Mortos in a 2 out of 3 falls match. I know Hologram's been pushed a lot on TV as like their luchador and he's like undefeated and stuff, and that's great, but I'm okay with that. I have nothing against Hologram, but what in the world is the purpose of making this 2 out of 3 falls? Like, nobody honestly thinks Hologram's going to lose this, right? But anyway, so that's Wrestle Dream. Enjoy that. I'm only interested for it if Shane McMahon shows up. That's the one thing that's kind of got me, is like, is this going to be where Shane... Because it feels like Jon Moxley right now is doing like his own version of the higher power, the greater power angle, and we're waiting for that big reveal. And I feel like Shane's got to be the guy, right? It's got to be Shane McMahon. And they're going to do that reveal at the end of the show, which will be flipping huge. And McMahon on a different wrestling product, that's crazy. That's wild. So that's interesting, but everything else, I just don't care. But anyways, that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the little bell icon so you get notified when I post new videos. And question and answers video, I'm going to be doing that soon. So if you have not submitted your questions already, go ahead and do so, and I will answer them when I get around to doing the Q&A video. But again, that is all I have for you now. Thanks again, everybody, for listening, and I will see you all later.